Hello, and welcome to the next episode of the Time Travel Trio podcast. My name is Matt, and I will be leading the discussion today.
And my name is Jen.
And I'm Hyde.
And today we will be discussing Timecrimes. Fair warning, we will be spoiling the movie, so if you have not seen the movie and you want to be fresh when you see it, go ahead and stop listening and then watch the movie and then listen again. So fair warning, spoilers ahead. So Timecrimes is a movie from 2007, and it's written and directed by Nacho Vigalondo. And a brief synopsis is, a man accidentally gets into a time machine and travels back in time nearly an hour. Finding himself will be the first of a series of disasters of unforeseeable consequences.
That's pretty good synopsis.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
unforeseeable for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so have you guys seen this movie before, or is this your first time seeing it?
This is my second time seeing it.
And this is my first time seeing it.
It was my second time seeing it. No, third time seeing
Third time.
it.
Yeah.
Because I saw it a few years ago. I think I was recommended to it from a podcast, maybe Indoor Kids or Nerdist. They said it was a good time travel movie, so I went down and I tried to see it. And then with Jen,
Yes.
when we started dating, I said we should watch the movie because it's a time travel movie, and that's all.
Mhm.
You saw it.
Yep.
Yes.
And then
Well, I saw it because of the show. You were like, hey, we're going to do
Yeah.
this one about time crimes. And I was like, sure.
Yeah.
I'm always down to see a new movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that we get the perspective of like different. You've seen it the most, and I've only
Right.
seen it twice, and then you're completely new to it.
We knew.
So,
I saw it just a few days ago, actually.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. So this is a very small movie. The budget was only $2.6 million. The cast is only four people. I think there's 5 listed in the cast because one is a stand-in for the main character. But essentially, we have Hector, who is our protagonist,
Yeah.
more or less. Sometimes antagonist.
Yeah.
And we have the scientist. I don't think we ever had a name. He's just scientist.
Yeah. I think Hector is the only one actually that has. Well, his wife has a name, but
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Oh, and Clara, the girl.
Clara's his wife.
Yeah, the girl's never given a name.
All right. Fair enough.
Naked girl. That's what I would call it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you said you looked for a trailer for this movie, but there wasn't really one.
Yeah, there's a trailer, but it looks really lo-fi. There's no announcers, so it's just like a score and some words flashing on the screen. So, unfortunately, we can't play a clip.
Yeah, not really ideal for podcasts.
Yeah, we'll have a clip later on from the movie explaining the time travel, more or less, but there's no trailer for now, so...
Okay, so do you want to just hash out the plot then?
Yeah, is there any other, any other general feelings about the movie before we kind of dig into the plot?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could start if you want to say if we liked it.
Yeah.
We could go that way.
Yeah, you guys.
Well, I liked it. This is my first time seeing it. I liked it. There were some things where I was like, okay. And, it's, like you said, like he's the protagonist, he's also the antagonist. And so there was a couple moments where I was like, well, why wouldn't you just do this or that? Like, there was a couple moments where I felt, like, frustrated watching him, like, live out his decisions. And
He's not the smartest guy.
He's not the smartest guy. And I felt like the ending, I mean, it feels like he pulls off, like, a really, like, a jerk move for his happy ending, I suppose.
Right.
Or somewhat happy ending.
He's very selfish.
Yeah, it's a very selfish decision. So I was like, I wasn't sure if I felt very good about him by the end of it, but I was very engrossed in the plot, and it was. I've never seen anything really done like that before.
Mhm.
Right.
It's a really interesting. I know some people will describe it as a time loop movie.
Yeah.
Right.
Like it's almost not time travel, even though it is. I liked it though. It was it's pretty well acted. I watched the dub version, so that threw me
Yes.
off a little bit for a while because some of the voices don't match up to the characters, particularly the scientist. I didn't like the voice they gave him,
Mm.
but it was very different and interesting, and I liked it.
Yeah, I agree. The looping, the voiceover didn't throw me as much the second time. I know the first time I watched it, it did really distract me a lot because I was like kind of, because we've taken classes and stuff and I know how that works and studied
Right.
film, so it's like kind of jarring when like movies aren't, I don't want to say perfect, but when there's imperfections in movies, because we've studied it, we're more kind of prone to notice it first, like
Right.
jump cuts and stuff like that. But the second time around, it actually didn't bother me, and I really do enjoy this movie. I think it's smart with how it handles the story. That it's complicated, but it's not
It's
too
crafted.
complicated. Yeah, it's well crafted. It's simple, which I think really works. It feels like a movie that, like, oh, I could make this movie, kind of a thing, but in a good way, not
Yeah.
in like a, oh, this is, low budget indie movie way. Like, I enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was a good movie.
Yeah. When I first saw it, I liked it a lot because it was something I haven't seen before.
Right.
I liked it enough to recommend it to Jen for us to watch it together. And obviously for us to do it this early on in the podcast, I think it's a different example from time travel as opposed to Back to the Future. But the reason why I liked it is the way that they handled the time travel, because the timeline was set. Like, you
Right.
saw everything happen kind of from a different perspective early on, but like, you can't change it. There's one timeline. There's no past, future. It's just, here's how time is going, and we see it unfold more as we see different Hectors
Mm-hmm.
experience the time travel.
Yeah, Hector 2, 3.
Yeah.
So I want to get into the plot
Yes.
for the people who want to listen but aren't going to watch the movie or want to be reminded.
Yeah.
So then we can talk about it openly without feeling like people are kind of lost
Yeah,
with what
lost.
we're discussing.
Yeah. So essentially, this couple has a new house in the Spanish countryside. It's a middle-aged man named Hector and his wife, Clara.
Mhm.
And so they're kind of remodeling, or I don't know if they recently moved in, but they're renovating. They're putting stuff together. There's boxes, and there's construction going on. And he's kind of looking around the yard with his binoculars early on. I don't know why he was looking at something that, like the top of a silo first early on, and then he was sitting outside and he's looking at his binoculars to the forest, and he just saw a girl, and and his wife is doing stuff, and he's trying to be like a weird creeper guy, and then she takes her top off, and so of course he's intrigued. And so his wife is saying stuff, and he's waiting for her to go away. I think she wanted to get food or something like that. So he was like, "Okay, well, you drive and get food, and I'll just wait here and watch this girl." And then he notices.
Well, he didn't tell her that he's watching a girl.
Obviously,
The subtext.
his eyes said it.
Yeah.
And so he tries to find this girl again, but she's, I guess, he can't find her. So he moves his chair, and he sees her on the ground, passed out, essentially. Right? Is that, or is she
Passed
missing?
out, or
Yeah, she
Maybe-
seems unconscious.
yeah,
she's unconscious.
He doesn't know if maybe she's dead or whatever.
Right.
I don't know.
So I guess in an effort to maybe save her or figure out more, I don't think he's gonna creep on her there in person, but he wants to go help her. Maybe, I think.
Yeah, I think his intentions are good. If you see someone standing, then a minute later they look like they're
Right.
knocked out on the ground, you would kind of be like, oh
And
gosh.
naked, like
yeah,
maybe.
that could be
it's
good.
like,
Yeah.
I didn't get the vibe from him that he was looking for infidelity of any sort. I
Correct.
think it was just kind of like, oh, hey, he's
yeah.
he's seen the same pair of breasts probably for like about a good 20 years, and now he's like, oh, this is
Yeah.
new. It's
Someone's
different.
gonna take their top off. You might as well
Right,
make
it's
the most
like-
of it, right?
I mean,
And he's like, yeah, oh, they might need help.
yeah.
right,
essentially.
it's just
Yeah.
like, doing the right thing.
Yeah. So he starts walking. He's going. It looks like he's walking around for a while almost. And then he kind of finds where she is. And as he's approaching her to see if she needs help, longingly, like looking at her, kind of creepily a little bit, he gets stabbed by scissors all of a sudden
Mhm.
and runs away. Do we see the guy with the bandages for?
We
first?
do.
Yeah,
Okay.
they see the bandages.
Right,
We don't
so
know
you-
it is.
Yeah,
So-
from his perspective, Hector 1's perspective.
Right. So this weirdo with pink bandages.
Yeah.
Stabs him with scissors. He runs away, and he runs to this mansion or facility. It looks like,
Mhm.
and he bangs on the window, and he's trying to get help, and he immediately breaks the window, which I think he should have knocked first on a door, maybe.
There was loud music playing though.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And we've established he's not the smartest.
He's not the
No,
smartest
he's
guy.
really
He really isn't.
he's kind of react first, think later.
Yeah. So once he's in the
Yeah.
facility, he casually finds a medical facility, wraps up his arm with a bandage because he has like a stab wound, obviously,
Mhm.
and then he finds a walkie-talkie, and he's asking for help, and this guy who's on the other end decides to say, "Okay, you're safe in there. Just wait there. Oh wait, I have security cameras. I can see this guy come in there." Because Hector 1 as we'll call him, is telling him that he was attacked, and so this guy on the other end tells him that he's coming towards the building and that he should run towards him. He's in the silo, right? He said he's in a silo down the way.
Mm-hmm.
So as he's running towards the silo, he has the walkie-talkie. It's like a really tense, thriller movie almost.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets to the silo and there's a scientist there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is what happens.
Yes.
What?
So we're under the impression that the killer or the scissor guy is chasing him.
Yes. But we don't ever see him. It's not like a chase movie where it cuts back and forth between the person chasing and the person running. It's just the person who's running away, Hector.
It's just Hector 1 running away with the walkie-talkie.
Yeah.
And so we don't know who's giving him the warnings. We don't really know this other guy.
Mm-hmm.
And we find out he's a scientist who just has this machine, this big old tub, essentially, with this white fluid in it.
Doesn't look suspicious at all.
Yeah. we all know it's a time machine, but Hector 1 is just like, what's this thing? The scientist said, okay, hide in this tub. He won't check in there. You'll be safe in there.
And because Hector is an idiot, he's like, sure, okay.
Even though why not?
When he's literally when he's jumping in the tub or like gonna get in the tub, he like turns around and the guy who's chasing him literally looks at him through the window and then he steps in. So from Hector 1's perspective, wouldn't the guy see that he went in the tub if he was actually chasing him?
Right.
Then he would know to look in there.
Yeah, now he's trapped in the tub.
Doesn't make sense, but anyway.
Not a lot of room to swing your arms.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if you haven't seen the movie, you find out way more about what's happening during the day. But right now, all you see is Hector 1's perspective.
Yeah.
You're just being chased by this guy with scissors, and the scientist says, get in this tub. When he gets in the tub, the scientist is kind of acting all weird and just doesn't want to get in with them. And he lowers this top over the tub, and now Hector's trapped in this tub with this fluid. The next thing you know, there's a flash of light. Hector is freaking out, and then the tub raises, and Hector gets out. He's trying to get air, and he notices that it's daytime, and he just now time traveled to the past.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
he figures out that he went to the past when he goes outside and then looks with his binoculars and sees himself. Because otherwise you would think that maybe he was in there for a long time and it was the next day. But he looks and then he sees himself in his yard with his wife, creeping with the binoculars on the naked woman, and then he kind of realizes. Right.
So the scientist is there. He's acting surprised. This guy just came out of my tub because, he says, oh, it's today, the day, and he notices that he himself is over there. So the scientist kind of explains that he went back in time. Mm-hmm. Hector, of course, doesn't understand what's happening. He's confused. Mm-hmm. He doesn't listen to the scientist, really. Would you want to play the clip?
Yeah.
Of the scientist explaining more or less what happened to Hector? So this is the scientist explaining to Hector what essentially just happened to him and the timeline, essentially.
This is you. This arrow moves from the past to the future. Okay? But at this point, you enter the tank and travel an hour and a half into the past. To here. You become sort of a, Hector 2. And now your house is Hector 1. Hector 1? Hector 1, your reflection in the mirror, remember? Look, you're here. You're seeing yourself, but there's only one arrow. But the time... Your reflection will last up to here. This is what we'll do. Hide here. I'll configure the tank.
Alright, so that's the scientist explaining to Hector that there's now two of him because he went to the past. We don't quite understand how the time travel works in this movie yet. We find out later on that no matter what Hector 2 or 3 does, the time won't change. But Hector 1, now Hector 2, thinks that he can change stuff in the past. Do you guys want to get into the time machine and kind of the logic of the time travel?
I mean, I think the best thing to do is just explain the entire movie and then talk about it.
All right.
So I think that would be easier for
because
that's true. We had to get into Hector 3 and all that stuff.
Because once that happens, the movie starts off fairly straightforward.
Right.
He goes back in time. There's the younger version of himself, the one that's happened in the past, and then there's him. But as I'm sure you'll explain, when he keeps going to all these places, he ends up keep going back in time. So he's created, I think, that makes three
There's
Hectors.
three, yeah.
There's three Hectors, and he's trying to change everything that happens,
Right.
and it is causing chain reactions, like kind of butterfly effect type things.
Right.
Sort of similar to Back to the Future we talked about on the last show, with much more dire consequences in terms of like car accidents. He gets into a car accident because of this, but
People dying.
people dying. His
person dying.
the little girl, the topless girl, dies in several timelines, and then his wife dies in several timelines, and
Not really.
Well,
There's only one timeline.
that's true. You're right. There's only one timeline.
Only one person died.
I
Zero.
think we should explain the rest of the movie though.
All right.
Just so that the listener who's I know if I was listening to this and we were kind of jumping all around and I just wanted to know
What's
what
going
happened
on?
in the movie and then
Yes.
to hear us talking about it, this would be frustrating.
So,
Yeah.
so now with the time traveling Hector, Hector 1 is the one that's still at his house, still creeping on the girl. Hector 2 is now at the facility with the scientist. The scientist tells him to stay here, don't go anywhere, don't mess with time, because the scientist doesn't know that there's only one timeline. He thinks that Hector can affect things. So the scientist tells him to stay. Of course, Hector 2 just leaves, like, as soon as he can.
Right.
He finds car keys and just drives away. I think he was upset that his wife is now with himself, who is a different person.
Yeah, he didn't really understand that it was still him.
Yeah, he was like, oh, but my wife's with another person. That isn't me, but it
Right.
is him. It was exactly him an hour ago. So with the car, he's driving around and he sees the girl that he saw in the woods. And he stops the car, or is the car stopped and he sees the girl?
No, he's driving, he sees her, and then he stops the car.
Okay. So as he's sitting there, he gets hit from behind and careens down this hill and hits a tree, and his head is split open.
Mm-hmm.
So he's bleeding out, and he takes the bandage from his arm and wraps around his face, slowly realizing that he is now the person with the pink bandage on his face. So that's kind of the first little unfolding that we see of this Hector 2 and how he'll affect the timeline, essentially.
Right.
As he's in the car, the girl goes down to help him, and she doesn't see his face. She just sees him with the bandages on. So obviously she wants to help him out, and he's hurt, and he's kind of disoriented, but he now sees that she's the girl. So this kind of brings him on the journey of, I guess, recreating what he saw earlier.
Because, yeah, the scientist told him that he needed to make sure that Hector 1 still got into the tank.
That's right.
And so he tries to, does everything he remembers or knows how to do to make sure that Hector 1 continues the same sequence of events.
Right. So kind of throughout this, there are some little hints of what's been happening before, but we don't quite know. So there's a trash can that was knocked over. We don't know how it was knocked over yet, but he picks up this trench coat. So now he's the trench coat wearing pink bandage guy with scissors. The girl has scissors because she was cutting hair. So he took the scissors, put it in his pocket, and kind of told the girl to go towards the woods. Really creepily, she's kind of getting suspicious of him, obviously. And they get to where he thinks she was at before and starts to kind of act creepy. And she runs away, right? At some point before.
She attacks him, and then they roll downhill in a scuffle. I
Yeah.
suppose. And she is knocked unconscious, and that's when he takes her and puts her against the rock, and he takes off her clothes, and she's naked, so that Hector 1 sees her unconscious, and then
Right.
goes over there.
So at this point, Hector 2 kind of he manipulated this girl to be where he saw her before, and now he's kind of waiting for Hector 1 to find her. And as Hector 1 finds her, you see from his perspective now of him attacking Hector 1 with the scissors. And it looks much less frightening because you're just behind both of them, and you just it's almost kind of comical.
He's like, "Ha!"
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
almost comical. He stabs her, he stabs him, he runs away, and Hector 2 is like, all right, that's done. And then he chases after him, I think.
Right, because he has to get him into the
Yeah,
the-
he
Right.
chases him so that Hector 1 will go to the facility.
Right. And so it's now the other side of this tense moment of Hector 1 being chased by this guy with scissors to now Hector 2 trying to recreate the moment when he had the binoculars and he was in the forest and he tried to turn around at the right time. Hector 2 messed up like 4 or 5 times. So that was pretty funny. It's like a different tone now. Now it's more like a comedy almost, less of a thriller. So Hector 2 does what he can to get Hector 1 to run away. Once he makes Hector 1 want to run away, Hector 2 hears a scream from far away. We don't quite know how, but we know it's the girl in the forest. So he runs back to her, and she's gone. So then he goes to try to find where she went. He finds her necklace, I think, on a tree or a branch somewhere. Yeah. And eventually he ends up back at his house. He sees people in his house. He sees lights come on. And he's in the house trying to chase the girl, essentially. I think we see her a little bit, right? So he goes up the stairs. He gets hit by a table.
And then he goes out, climbs onto the roof.
Right.
And he sees the girl's shoes. And then he tries to help her, and then she falls and dies off the roof.
Right.
And he sees her and thinks that it was his wife.
Right.
Who he killed accidentally.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Somewhere before this, he took the bandages off, so now he just has like a scarred face and everything like that. So he's no longer the bandage guy, but he's still scarred and like that. So he thinks he killed his wife. Hector 2 is now thinking, the worst.
So he wants to go back to the scientist to fix his mistakes so that he doesn't kill his wife.
Right.
So he contacts the scientist over the walkie-talkie and realizes that Hector 1 is still there, and so he convinces the scientist to lure Hector 1 to the lab with the fake warnings that he's being pursued and all this security camera stuff that he says.
Right. And then Hector 2 drives, I think in his car, to the scientist. And that's when you see Hector 1 get scared by the peak. I guess he saw the peak bandages on at that point then. Yeah, because then he jumped up the window and scared him into the tub. And so that's when Hector 2 jumped back in the tub, and told the scientist to put him 30 seconds before that happened. So there's a pretty cool moment once Hector 3 pops out that his hand is behind the machine, and you actually see it the first time through. Did you notice that? It's a really quick shot.
Yeah, I can't say that I did. So I don't know if I did notice that.
Yeah, so there are a few things that, like little details that they sneak in there. So when Hector 1 pops out of the vat, you see a hand behind a machine. It's a really quick shot. But then when Hector 2 jumps in the vat, they show that moment again and they freeze frame it. And you actually do see it there.
But before you kind of skip, before Hector 2 goes back in, the scientist explains to him that there is a Hector 3 who told him to stop Hector 2 from getting in. But the scientist is kind of like, well, it doesn't really matter. No matter what I do, you're still going to go back. It's still going to happen. Right. So he sends him back 30 seconds or whatever it is, and Hector 2.
Before Hector 2.
Yeah.
Right. So now there's Hector 3. Hector 3's goal is to essentially
save his wife
by trying to change everything. He gets in a car and he kind of drives behind Hector 2 without him seeing him, and he gets out the gate barely, and then he rams Hector 2. He's the guy that bumped Hector 2 down originally. Right. So Hector 3, after he bumps him, hits a trash can and then falls down another hill. So now his second car accident of the day.
Well, he doesn't fall down a hill. Well, he drives off the hill. He hits the other car and then he drives off. Because
he hits the car, swerves, hit the trash can, then loses control and goes down the hill again.
Yeah,
and the car flips and he's...
Yeah, he loses control because he realizes that he was the one who knocked the trash can over in the first place.
So. Yes. So Hector 3 is now in another car accident. He's even more messed up. He crawls out of the car, he gets in a walkie-talkie and tells the scientist, this is now before anything, that he should stop Hector 2 from doing anything he can to get back in time because he realizes now that he failed horribly. So Hector 3 is now messed up, and the girl actually stumbles across him after the scream was her realizing Hector 3, who's all messed up. He's all bloody and beaten up, and so that scream that Hector 2 heard was the girl seeing Hector 3. Hector 3 and the girl both decide to sit down. Well, they sit down for a little while because Hector 3 knows that the killer, himself, won't find him because he didn't find them in the past anyways.
Yeah.
So the girl runs around for a little bit while Hector 3 is passed out, I guess. And she realizes that there's a house not too far away, his house. So they go towards his house, and he's helping her, I guess, run away from him, Hector 2.
Yeah, she kind of does her own. She goes in the house and maybe is trying to find stuff. I don't know. It doesn't really say. She kind of walks off, and he's by himself in the kitchen. And then his wife
That's
comes
right. His
and
wife
sees
comes
him, and says that there's a man approaching the house, which is Hector 2.
Right.
And so Hector 3 hides his wife in the shed so that she's safe. And
Right.
then he sets up things so that it leads to the roof accident, where he tells the young girl to go to the attic, and he cuts off her hair so that it looks like his wife, and he puts his wife coat on her and all this nonsense. And then the events happen and she falls off the roof.
Right. So now we see the events that happen again. We now realize that the girl that died was actually the young girl from the forest, and that his wife has been safe all along, thankfully. And so now Hector 3 is just exhausted. His wife is safe. So what? Their other girl died. He doesn't care. He's almost dead. His wife is safe, and he sits down in the yard, and him and his wife sit there until the cops come by.
Mm-hmm. And that's the end of the movie.
Right. That essentially closes the Hector loop.
Right.
So sorry for that plot dump, but I guess now we can get into the time travel aspect, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the question is, because I was like, the ending kind of irked me. I'm like, well, why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't he just explain to Hector 2 what's really going on? Because it's not like he has to explain this to like an irrational person. He's explaining it to himself, so he'll know how to convince himself.
And he already knows that time travel exists.
Right.
Right.
So it didn't seem to me like the violent end did not seem to make sense, because if myself, who knew that the time travel is possible, talks to someone who's like, yo, don't do this because otherwise you're going to get into this crazy thing. You just need to like go and like disappear or whatever, like, or something. Or, even I don't know if that you could do that, because maybe that would mess up the timeline. But maybe even if he was going to kill someone, why not kill Hector 2? I mean, it's not like Hector 2 is not like in good shape either. I mean, neither is Hector 3. But it's not. It can't be that hard to beat up your beat up self. Like, it's.
But killing Hector 2 would kill himself.
That's true, because it's the same timeline.
Well, this is interesting, because the way that this movie handles time travel is only one timeline. But Back to the Future, if you go back into the past, there's now different timelines. You can affect one, but there's only one timeline, and we're watching how it unfolded from different perspectives. Right. So, kind of from a rules perspective, from the way that they have the law set up, you can't change anything. The way that we saw everything happen with Hector 1, that's how it's going to happen. We just see more about that timeline as we see the different Hectors go through. So obviously, if you were in his shoes, you would do things differently. But since Hector is the main character, he did things a certain way, and that's how, like, no matter what he did, he couldn't change anything.
Right.
We just witnessed more of the timeline as we saw more Hectors.
Right. Time cannot be changed, but it's an interesting point. We kind of talked about this Back to the Future. Is time that way because of his other time travels? Like, does the timeline that Hector 1 experiences originally, is that because he's attacked, we assume, by himself in that first, which means it's not, he's Hector 1 of this film, but he's not Hector 1 of the universe, if that makes sense. Like, Hector's already been in a time machine in that Hector 1.
Yeah. There's 3 Hectors at that moment.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, how many Hectors are there? Are there only 3, or is this kind of like a never-ending number of Hectors?
There are only 3, so...
that we know of, but...
That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm just saying, like, outside of the movie, do we know that in the movie, it's made very clear it's 3. But I interpreted, at least, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there actually might be an infinite number of Hectors.
No, this movie is like, so there only is really one Hector that goes back in time twice. At one given moment, there's 3 Hectors, but there's only one timeline, and this guy eventually ends up at the end of this timeline. There's only one of him, and he just interacts with himself several times. So it's kind of like a weird causal thing, because he is the reason he did the things originally. Like, because Hector 2 made this girl stand here is what allowed Hector 1 to see it happen. But the reason why he saw it happen was because Hector 1 had binoculars and was looking around.
Right.
So it's like a weird causal thing, but all of this is happening because the scientists turn on the machine.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So the time machine, it's this weird vat with liquid and energy units, and essentially the scientist works for this company that was going to turn on the machine 6 months from now. It's a weekend, by the way, so that's why it's like only 4 people in this whole universe, essentially. And the scientist wanted to see it happening before he left the project or something like that. So he turned the machine on against the rules, and because he turned the machine on, it allowed time travel to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So this is based off of a real kind of machine that people think of. Like sometime I saw a scientist on the show, like The Universe or something like that, where he wanted to create this machine where if you allowed time travel in it, you can travel back as far as you turned it on, essentially. Almost like a wormhole. The issue with that is that you need to have all the energy to create a wormhole. I can get into the science of it, but it's, too much. But essentially, if you were to make a machine like that, you can only travel as far back as the machine's been turned on.
Got it.
Like a wormhole box, essentially. If you get in the box in the future, you can go back to the past as long as it's been turned on.
As long as the time machine existed in that time frame.
Yes.
So it's almost like when you're DVRing the show and you come in late.
Yes.
And like you're like, well, as long as the TV was on this channel, it will record everything that's been on this channel.
It's a universe DVR, essentially.
It's a TVR.
Yeah. So scientists can use it to like send information back, or I don't know.
Right.
People, it's impossible to do. By the way, impossible, never happened. Too much energy and all
Thank
that
goodness,
stuff.
I guess.
Mhm.
Otherwise, there's a bunch of Hectors running around.
Yeah.
Right.
Screwing with your day.
But in this movie time machine, by buying into that, they have all the energy to send back a human being into time. The scientist is to blame essentially for all this happening because he turned it on.
Right. Because if he hadn't turned it on, Hector wouldn't have seen the woman. He would have just used his binoculars, stare in the forest, not seeing anything, and then he probably would have gone back inside and fell asleep. And nothing would have happened.
Right. But because the machine was on, it allowed the opportunity for the girl to be sexually assaulted, essentially,
Right.
and for himself to, go back in time, obviously. So I blame the scientist.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is kind
And
of scientist fault. And binoculars and scientists.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it is kind of scientist fault. And there's like, I mean, I guess he's probably going to get fired because they're eventually going to figure out that he turned on the machine unauthorized.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, yeah, there's really no punishment for the scientist, even though he's really the cause of everything going haywire.
Right.
And also, a very irresponsible scientist. Just stay here. Like, I mean, really? Dude.
Well, the scientist says, I can't chain you up, but just stay here.
Right.
But then he just
Yeah.
leaves and just doesn't even care.
I don't like, in so many of these movies, people, the scientist or the person who knows more of the science aspect of it, always says, well, no, it's better if you don't know the details. But wouldn't it, like, help things if these people actually understood what was at stake more?
right.
You know?
Well,
Right.
that is true. However, the scientist did know everything because Hector 3... Did he explain everything? No, he just said Hector 2. Okay, sorry. Yeah.
No, yeah. I mean,
Hector
you know,
3 just says, Hector 2 will explain it to you, and just walked away.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I mean, Hector's not, like we said, not the smartest
He's
guy.
very lazy, and his
Right.
wife is very annoying, are the notes that I have.
So I think it's kind of annoying.
She's annoying. She has a hearing problem, and not literally, but every time that she has a line of dialogue, it's what I can't hear what you're saying over watering my very quiet hose over the flowers. Like,
Right.
I can't. And he's lazy. He makes her like she's doing all this work, and he's literally sitting there on his binoculars. He's not
Right.
doing anything. He's not helping her with the gardening. He's not getting the groceries out of the car.
Yeah.
He's making her build the stupid table. Like, what a lazy SOB. Like, I can't.
And then the poor girl who's just in the forest, she ends up like
Yeah.
having to be like stripped naked.
Mhm.
And then she ends up being set up to basically die off a roof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, I felt really bad for her. I was like, she
Yes.
literally has nothing to do with any of
Yeah.
this. And yet
Uh-huh.
she has to die because...
She had good intentions. Too.
Right.
She wanted to help him. One note
She
that I
cut her
had
friend's hair.
was
Right.
that I don't think Hector deserved to be the one to time travel.
Oh, of course not.
No. I mean, I do like the idea that someone who's this complete idiot and doesn't deserve it is the one who time travels.
Right.
But he is a bit unlikable.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the one I feel the most sorry for is actually Hector 2. I feel like Hector 2 is like really the one I feel like kind of bad for her because yes, he does all those things trying to recreate it, but like I said, it's more comedic. He's just trying to do like what the scientist is telling him to do, which is like everything needs to happen exactly. He doesn't realize that people are gonna like die. He doesn't realize that all this crazy stuff is gonna happen. He's just literally trying to make sure that like everything stays how it was.
Right.
And I mean, this is a guy who gets super angry because he thinks he doesn't understand that he is himself and that it's him with his wife.
Yeah,
Right.
he's
Like,
an idiot.
I guess it's a little admirable that he would be so upset about his wife possibly having sex with someone who's him but not
But
him.
I don't think that negates that he was being a creep, and you could say the perspective that he wanted a closer look at the naked girl's unconscious
That's
body.
true.
That
That's a
does
very good
not,
point.
just because he's defensive about his wife, makes, I don't know, I just...
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
But
true.
with Hector too, he didn't really care about the girl. He was more worried about himself seeing the girl. Like he was like,
Sure.
no, it's okay. I'm sorry, but just take your clothes off.
Yeah,
And
Hector
then-
2, but Hector 1, like, you could definitely
Oh,
make
right,
the
I see what you
defense
mean,
that he just wanted to see a closer look at
Right.
her.
He wanted to
Right,
see-
right.
He wanted to see boobies up close.
Yeah.
Which is weird because it's not like he doesn't get... Like, I mean, I know it's joking, like, he's seen the same pair of boobs, like, but that's way different from, like, oh, look at this hot woman in the woods. There's a big difference. He by going after, he made it, like, personal.
Right.
It's like, no one would bemoan the wife if she was looking at it and all of a sudden this Abercrombie and Fitch model was just taking his shirt off in the woods. I'm like, hey, it's not like Hector's, like, sculpted from stone.
Right,
So,
yeah,
you
exactly.
know.
Yeah.
I mean, the real consequence of this whole time travel experience is this poor girl is now dead.
Yeah.
Right.
The scientist is presumably going to get fired, maybe,
Maybe,
if they
yeah.
find out that he operated the
And
machine.
Hector's probably messed up for his
Well,
life.
he's going to go to jail because his blood's all over the place.
And yeah, I mean,
Prints are on
just
the
like,
on the scissors and
but like mentally, he's kind of messed up.
oh, of course,
Yeah.
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 And his wife just has no idea what's going on. She's
Right.
just like, okay, he will probably go to jail and she'll probably go back to watering the flowers.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Wasting her time building a table.
Did you guys think the time travel was relevant to the story though?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it definitely it was the story, which I always appreciate. That time travel isn't just a minor subplot of the movie,
Right.
like in something like Donnie Darko. I would say it's a minor subplot. It's not the movie.
Right.
But in a movie like this, it is the movie, and it's Hector time traveling multiple times. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and we kind of see more of the timeline as he time travels. So it kind of, the way that they use it to unfold more detail, I really appreciate it because there's little details that you see throughout. Like we hear some walkie-talkie conversations that you don't understand, or some noise that you hear more of as you see Hector 2 use the walkie-talkie, or we see how there's a golf cart at one point that was by the silo, but when Hector 2 comes out, you don't really notice it. It's in the background. Then they show the shot again, and it's missing.
Right.
We now see that Hector 3 wrote it away, and you kind of see the scientist look back while he's talking to Hector 2, but you don't. The way the camera angle is set up, they kind of hide Hector 3,
Right.
but he was there, really close by. So I like the way that they kind of hid certain details, but they also kind of hinted towards them too.
Mm-hmm.
They were definitely careful with how they placed the camera, and it told the story from these different perspectives. It reminded me, not like in just a very general sense, of that what was that movie called? That Matthew Fox movie with the different timelines, and there was that terrorist attack.
Oh,
Yeah.
Vantage Point.
Vantage Point, thank you.
Mm.
Yes, so it was like that, but not really at all. But just
I know
in
what
a
you're
sense
saying,
of
but like
like
the way they placed the camera.
this event, and they showed it from different angles, from different people's perspective. Well, really just from different Hector's perspectives. But that was something I really liked, and I thought that they did well in this movie.
Yeah.
No, it's a very well. I know I'm making fun of a couple of key points of it, but it's actually a very well made and compelling film.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's fun unraveling the mystery of this particular rules and sets and consequences of this time travel.
Yeah.
And it's well edited and well shot to make you understand feel Hector's confusion to a certain degree,
Right.
and also understand that like just how disastrous this type of time travel could be.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I it is kind of. I was telling you earlier that they're thinking about actually doing a remake of this with DreamWorks,
Oh, nice.
an English version of it, a true English version of it. It's been in development hell for like the last 3 years,
Yeah.
but they've been thinking about doing it, and I think I would like to see a remake of this movie because I think there are a couple of things that we're pointing out here that could be maybe ironed out a little bit.
Mhm.
Maybe make Hector a little bit more likable.
Yeah.
A little, yeah, maybe have a little bit more depth to the characters, to the
Right.
scientist, a little background on him, or
Yeah.
And have a driving force not be a naked lady in the forest, maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, look, I like the fact that Hector is an idiot and
Yeah.
that he really doesn't know because I too many times in time travel movies, you get people who are prepared more or less to time travel. Even in something like Back to the Future with Marty McFly, even though he has to have the rules explained to him, once he understands the rule, he pretty much follows the rules. Like, he makes a mistake early on with interacting with his parents, but that's only before he doesn't understand the rules of time travel.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, so it was kind of funny to see somebody who totally has things explained to him and still decides that he's going to do the stupid option. So it would be kind of maybe cool to see that same type of attitude taken towards time travel. Like, man, whatever, I don't need to listen to you. But maybe it was just a slightly more likable character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I also like that it was really low budget. Like, there was a house, there was a facility, and like a science room, and there was a bunch of forest. But
Right.
even using that small set and only 4 actors essentially on screen, they kind of really told a good story and it looked believable. Like, the machine was pretty cool looking at a huge old roof that dropped down on it, and big old science stuff.
Yes.
So it looked really cool. I think for $2.6 million, did a pretty good job.
It seems like all their money went to like the locations,
Yeah.
and that car crash and the vat, or the tub. Like, I think but that's cool. It never felt. Sometimes you watch an indie film like that with small roles and you feel like they're just hiding actors away from you. Like, they're just like, this is the best we can do.
Right.
But, except for maybe, maybe like a little bit when like the car crash happens, there's really never a moment where I feel like, oh, I'm watching such an indie film.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
like, oh, this is like so low budget.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, there should be more people or something.
Yeah.
Is there something you guys like the most about it? I mean, your favorite part of the movie or the worst part of the movie?
I like the moment that he realizes that Hector 2 realizes that he's the bad guy when he's in the car and he gets in the accident and it like really shows the blood dripping or the whatever the mush was that looked like milkshake dripping on the car seat floor. I really like that moment because we kind of realize it at the same time that he does, which doesn't always happen. Sometimes, like, the first time you see it, you're like, I mean, maybe if you probably realized it before that, but like when I first saw it, I was like, oh, that's really cool. I don't know, the way that they placed it with him looking in the rearview mirror, and it kind of showed that whole time theme.
Right.
That was probably my favorite part, and then he kind of turns crazy because of it, and I like that. Although I was like wondering what would happen if he did try and change something, because he didn't really change anything, and it didn't feel like maybe Hector 3, but it didn't really feel like he purposefully did something against what he saw happen the first time.
Yeah.
Right.
He was going to try to, but then he got an accident and kind of give up almost.
Yeah.
Right.
So that would be, I think if they did remake it, that would be something that I would want to see, or like why they wouldn't show it. Because if it were me and I saw all this bad stuff happen and I got in a car crash, whatever, I would want to try and change something and see how, see what that affected, if it made it better or worse.
Right.
Right.
But what about you? What did you
Yeah, I agree. Actually, and that's actually my favorite part. And I pretty much figured out.
You knew it was him from the...
No.
Okay.
I'm actually, I pretty much around the same time you figured it out is when I figured it out. I was not ahead of the game on this one. When
Nice.
as he got into the car, as soon as he got into the car accident and I saw the blood on him, I'm like, oh, okay, now I get it. But I pretty much figured out the same time the character is.
Right.
Because I didn't know where the movie was going at this point.
Right.
I really didn't. And I actually thought, like what you thought, I thought he was going to keep trying to change things. I did have kind of a sense that I thought it was going to be more of like the theory of time travel we talk about, where it's, you throw a rock into the river, but the river keeps going, kind of thing. They talk about in Action Days of Future Past and a couple other time travel movies. Like, no matter what you really do, unless it's a major, major change, everything always finds a way to correct itself.
Yeah.
And so I thought they could have played around with that, because this basically what it's saying. Like, no matter what, At least that's what I got from it. Like, no matter what you do, it's gonna end up the same way.
Right.
Yeah.
Whether it's because that's just the way it has to be, or if like it just the universe forces you to make
Yeah.
decisions that
But
are
you
gonna
made
do.
that decision anyway, so
Right.
Yeah.
you didn't even know you didn't know that you
Yeah.
did it. Yeah.
I mean, my favorite part is that it's kind of more, I guess, the writer and director side of it all. Nacho basically crafted this little time loop,
Mhm.
kind of really intricately. You know, like the
Yeah.
reason why everything happened was because he did something else, and it was really kind of cool to see all that unfold. But I also like that the time travel, the way the timeline is regarded, essentially, like you can't change anything, and whatever happened happened.
Yeah.
We just see more of it unfold.
Yeah.
And whenever I think of time travel, that's the way I like it to be, because in my mind, there's only one timeline, you know.
Mhm.
And so for him to stick to that and to do it really well and to kind of have a really interesting way to portray it all was really satisfying for me, you
Yeah.
know,
Mm.
because you know the science wasn't too heavy, but it was enough to say, okay, time travel is happening, and now you kind of just get into like the implications and kind of the rules of time travel, you
Mhm.
know, that Nacho wants to kind of portray.
Yeah. No, I agree. I liked, you know, they did a good job with, I mean, some of the music cues were kind of clunky,
Mhm.
but the music itself felt very much like watching an episode of Lost,
Mm.
almost with
Yes.
a little bit of like Twin Peaks at the
Yeah.
same time,
Yeah, some
which
Twin
kind
Peaks
of
moments.
like fits with this type of movie.
Yeah.
It kind of felt that way. You know, that some of the bright red colors that they had, the girls' pants and the red van, were very vibrant against
Yeah, the
green
red jacket.
forest. Yeah, the red jacket. And I like there was, the second time around, I did notice that in the first time that Hector goes through, Hector 1, when he's being chased by the bandaged man, they make a point to show the man holding the scissors, and you really see the ring on his finger.
Yes.
And then the next time, Hector, I think maybe getting out of the tub after he time travels.
No, he falls off the fence.
Oh, when he falls off the fence, yeah, it shows it like not
It's the same
blatantly,
hand,
but
yeah.
it shows his hand with the ring on it, and you can kind of make that connection there too.
Yeah.
Which I liked.
Yeah. Would you guys want to experience this time travel?
No.
No,
No.
not even a little, because
As
maybe-
Hector or through the machine?
well, definitely not as Hector,
Of
because he's a
course.
freaking moron. But
Right. And you get 2 car accidents.
yeah, I mean, the machine, I like the science of this time travel, but first of all, I don't want to get in a giant tub of white goo that I don't know what it is to time travel. And it's so unpredictable that you really have to just trust someone else to send you, that you really I felt like I would have no control over where I was going or what would be happening. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't want to go back in time and see myself. I've already been there. I want to keep going, continue with my life.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Jen. It would be very cool scientifically to have a time machine like this.
Yeah.
It definitely would be cool because there'd be safety to it. There's not like you can't go back and like kill someone or change history or you know like it's not as wildly dangerous as like the Back to the Future time travel is.
Yeah.
But I don't also would never see the point of doing it because then now there's just 2 Matthew Robinsons walking around in one timeline, and that feels like that's eventually going to cause a problem.
Well, that actually, like, I don't know if you guys have seen or read Harry Potter 3,
Right.
but it is kind of this same, I can't believe I didn't even think about it before just this moment, but it is the same sort of idea that there's more than one of you at the same time. So it'll be interesting when we go through that movie to see how you guys feel about that, because it is that same sort of time travel concept of having 2 of you in one place. But in that movie, it's for a better reason than
Right.
just for the sake of time travel. It's kind of like to help, I mean, I won't give it away, but to help
Yeah, no
things
spoilers.
progress.
Right.
But like, there are definitely times when I'm like, man, I wish there was 2 of me, so like one of me could be at work and the other of me could like just stay at home and like play video games or whatever all day.
Right.
But you know, the consequences of this, not worth it. What about you?
I would want to do this time travel.
Yeah.
Obviously not as Hector, because he's dumb and he gets in car accidents.
Right.
But if I had a scientist friend who was like, "Hey, this thing can send you back an hour. Do you want to do it?" I would. Knowing that in this world, time is just one timeline, and it wouldn't have a Back to the Future consequences, I would do it just to do it. Yeah,
Just
I mean, yeah, the way that kind of this movie stays to the laws of time, I guess, is enough for me to say, yeah, I'll do that because I can't change anything in the past if I already
Sure.
did it. What I like most about this movie, when they first introduced the time travel, was the scientist asked him, because the first thing Hector did when he went back in time was try to call himself.
Yeah,
Of course,
which
'cause
is
he's
a
dumb.
natural dumb, but it's. I also did think that was a natural reaction to kind of
Yeah, that's true.
almost
Yeah.
proving that what the guy was saying was true. Because if like
Yeah,
someone
that's
who's
true.
as unintelligent like Hector is, he wouldn't necessarily buy that time travel
Right.
is true. This guy could be like pulling.
Right, I
his,
gave you a light show and you were in a white van. Of
Yeah,
course
that's
you time
true.
traveled.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, but the scientist asked him, "Did you get a phone call the first time?" And he said, "Yeah, I did." So that kind of that's a moment you're like, oh, okay, well then, okay, now something happened in the past that we know already happened, but now we kind of see how it happened. So,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know, I'm fine. I'll be fine going back an hour to,
That was
you know.
like one of my favorite things about this storytelling is, and it's very unique in that sense of there's these mysteries, and then instead of like a big giant reveal at the end of like how the stuff happened, it's a gradual release of information.
Right.
So we gradually see, the phone call, or
The trash can.
why the woman was there, and the trash can, and how Hector 2 got knocked off the road, and the mysteries. They're more added on later. It's not all just one big mystery in the very beginning.
Mhm.
So that was something I really liked about it. But,
Yeah, there's a moment where we think we know everything because Hector 2 kind of figured it out, but then Hector 2 had more mystery come up.
Yeah.
Right.
So now we see him being attacked, and so now we have to go back and see Hector 3. So yeah, I agree.
hmm
Any other notes besides the time travel related stuff?
I do have some quotes that I pulled.
Yes.
And there's, some leeway because there might be some stuff that didn't necessarily translate the way that it
Yes.
should, but for the most part, I only saw one time pun or
Yes.
noticed one. There might have been more, but I like one that
There's about
really,
one, yeah.
yeah, stood out for me was in the very beginning. His wife Clara, who she's just annoying, but says time flies around here, and you're kind of like, is this the movie that I'm going to be watching right now? But it's really not. So don't let that throw you if you're watching this movie for the first time. I like when, I think the scientist said, oh, so you've only traveled a little. Like, I thought that was kind of an interesting phrase, just kind of funny.
Right.
Like that you can travel a different amount of sizes. That's, I don't know, kind of funny. Other quotes. This machine doesn't solve problems, it creates them.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely agree. That's a good way to put it. It
Yeah.
definitely created more problems than, it didn't not create problems. So,
Yeah.
Hector says, I have no choice, stuff like that. There isn't a ton of dialogue either. So
No, it's a lot of it
Yeah.
is visual. And I mean, it's not a long movie. It's like 90 minutes. And
yeah.
it flies pretty briskly. It didn't
Mhm.
really drag ever.
Yeah,
Right.
I agree. It was a perfect amount of time,
Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
It didn't need to be longer.
Yeah, it was paced really well. And it was good. I mean, for the budget they had, I think nothing was really lacking. I mean, they had
Mhm.
good location for what they had to do, and
Yeah.
the acting was fine. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously we watched it in English, so it's kind of hard to get their actual delivery of the lines, but
yeah.
it was good.
It was, yeah. Hector had kind of a dumb look on his face a lot of the time, but yeah.
That's
I mean,
the character.
That's the character.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
So do you want to get into our final reviews, or?
Yeah,
All right.
we can start.
Yeah.
All right. So I really like the movie in general. It's not perfect, but as a movie, it's good moments, good development, good storytelling. So I think I'd give it a 9 out of 10 for the movie. Jen?
I agree. I think the storytelling is well thought out, which I always appreciate as a writer. And I liked the movie. I think some of the characters were a little bit too one-dimensional and kind of should have been at least more likable, more interesting, not just mysterious for the sake of being mysterious, like the scientist is kind of a mystery. He's just curious about if the time machine is going to work. I don't know. I think he should, would have liked to see more backstory on him or something, or the idea that, I guess I didn't like that they just let this guy handle this whole secret facility where they invented time travel and no one else is there but him.
Right.
And he just has free reign to like do whatever the hell he wants.
Right.
Kind of seems ridiculous. So I give this movie rating 8.5 out of 10.
Cool. I like the movie. Like I said, it's well directed, well written, well edited, good cinematography. So it's like in that sense of like its technical prowess, it's very solid. I mean, obviously, I didn't like the main character, but that's not necessarily anything that's going to knock off points for
Right.
it.
Well, he's the protagonist and the antagonist.
Yeah, exactly. So you kind of have to like both want him to succeed and also not want him to succeed at the same time.
Which is unique for this
Yeah,
movie.
it is very unique. And I liked a couple things they did with it. There are a couple points where I'm like you said, it kind of did frustrate me that he didn't really try harder to like change the past. I think that would have earned me a little bit more points in my book if I'd seen something where he distinctly tries to change the past and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I would like to have seen maybe, I don't know, like he doesn't try to get into the car accident, or he doesn't try to get into the car accident. Like it would have been funny. Maybe like he sees his car, he knows that if he rams it, it's going to start the same thing. But he decides not to, so he just like moves around it, and then he looks in his tail mirror, and then like a truck hits it, and it still goes over.
Yeah, like
that,
fate intervenes.
Like fate just intervenes. Like some of that would have added the creepiness factor, and like kind of made it like, oh, he's really.
He accidentally stepped on the accelerator anyway.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Like it's something. So that being said, like but I do love the time travel. It's very direct. It's very simple, easy to follow in many ways. I know us telling the plot out loud, it makes it kind of seem like it's very, very hard to follow, but it actually really isn't. It's pretty straightforward. So I'm going to give like an 8 out of 10.
Nice.
Yeah, I think it's a solid film.
Yeah, for the time travel, I mean, I love the way he did the time travel. It's like Lost, where whatever happened, and we just see more of it unfold. So, I mean, the time travel, it gets a 10 for me. I mean, this is the way, when I imagine time travel happening, this is kind of what I think, because, I think the timeline is just set in stone, essentially. You can see how it happens more in the past, but it's, there's no divergent timeline. It's just, here's the timeline, here's what happened, it's set in stone.
Yeah, I agree. I think the science of the time travel is good. I think it's going to be one of the better examples of time travel in movies that we're going to review, which is one of the reasons, too, why I wanted to do it so early on, so that we could kind of compare some of these different aspects and their similarities. This one, of course, is different than Back to the Future, but I also give this time travel rating 10 out of 10 because I think it's very well done.
I pretty much agree with you guys. I think I think the only thing I wish it explored a couple more elements of time travel. It doesn't quite explain the big plot holes for me with the time travel. Even though I think this is actually, there was time travel. If time travel did exist, it probably would look a lot like this.
Yeah.
But it's my problem with it ultimately is there's never really any explanation of like, well, now you have like 3 people in one timeline. How is this useful?
Yeah.
In science, it seems like what is the company going to use this time travel
What's the
for?
whole purpose of?
Right.
That's true,
Is it going to make like 3? Is it going to be like Prisoner Azkaban, where now you have 3 people doing the same job? Like, is it? Because then it makes it more of like a cloning machine, if that's the case. So there are little bits and pieces like that where I'm like, so I'm giving it a 9 out of 10 on the time travel, just because there's a few moments.
Yeah,
I'm
some
like,
answers, some questions.
Yeah, there's some unexplored territory, but that's being very nitpicky. And like 9 out of 10 is probably one of the higher time ratings I'm ever gonna give.
Yeah, the first 2, I know it like sounds like we're just like praising all the movies that we're gonna watch.
We love time travel movies.
But like Back to the Future and this movie, those are like definitely gonna be some of the highest ones.
Right.
There are some bad ones coming up.
Yeah.
There's some
So
bad
let's
coming up soon.
Wrap it up. And do you want to say what the Rotten Tomatoes rating is?
So a lot of people like this movie too. It didn't do well in the box office because it probably didn't have the big of a release. But on Rotten Tomatoes, it has an 88% from all the critics, which is really high. I mean, it's been out for 8 years, and it's 88% from all the critics is good. The audience has 79%, so it's pretty well liked across the board.
Yeah, we definitely. I mean, I know I do, but I would recommend seeing this movie at least once if you like this genre, for sure.
So if you still have not seen it, definitely see it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you already know what happens.
It's on
Sorry.
Amazon Prime, correct?
It's on Amazon Prime, and I think it's also on YouTube for $3.
Nice.
Okay.
Unfortunately, you got to pay for it.
Yeah.
But it's streaming. Yeah,
But
you can
it's
stream it.
available if you
Nacho's got to make his money, man.
Yeah.
Yes.
To build his another
Give
time
Nacho your money.
Yeah, seriously.
So we'll do some of our social media plugs. We are now officially on iTunes. You
Yes.
can subscribe, comment, review us there. We
We are
love
on-
you forever.
iTunes and
Yeah.
Stitcher.
We're on iTunes, Stitcher, and of course we're on SoundCloud.
Yes.
We are also on Twitter and Instagram at Time Travel Trio. So please follow us there and definitely send us your questions, comments about movies we've done in the past or movies that we're going to have coming up. And we'd love to answer any questions you have if we can. And we also do have a Facebook page that you can follow as well. And we all have personal Twitter, Instagram, all that kind of stuff around there too. So follow us and ask us your questions.
Yes. We want to hear from you guys.
And then Matthew,
Yeah.
Hyde.
Yes, Hyde.
You gotta get in the habit. Hyde is gonna be leading the next episode 3's discussion.
Right. And that'll be Edge of Tomorrow, one of my favorite time travel movies. And it's funny because Matt, you're talking about you want a timeline where it's just one timeline. And I've always been
From a science perspective.
From a science
yes.
perspective, right. And I've always been a fan of no, there are multiple timelines, you can change the past, and all these different things can happen. So Edge of Tomorrow is one of my favorite movies. It was a kind of surprise hit. But that is, for those who haven't seen it, it stars Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt. So directed by Doug Liman, who you might recognize from the guy who also directed The Bourne Identity. The brief synopsis, according to IMDb, is a military officer is brought into an alien war against an extraterrestrial enemy who can reset the day and know the future. When this officer is enabled with the same power, he teams up with a special forces warrior to try and end the war. This was a movie that it took a lot of people a long time to kind of give a chance.
Yeah, it was like a sleeper hit.
It was kind of a sleeper hit. It did okay at the box office. It didn't do as well as Warner Brothers wanted. It started to kind of do better on home video, as people have talked about. I think it was, Tom Cruise, it's a very hot and cold with people on Tom Cruise. They're either going to really like what he's doing or they're not. But I will tell you this, guys, if you have not seen Edge of Tomorrow, and Tom Cruise is basically invincible in almost every movie he's in. If you want to see Tom Cruise die a lot,
multiple times,
Yeah.
watch
it's
this movie.
Awesome.
He gets shot, he gets stabbed,
Yeah.
you name it, he gets it.
If you hate Tom Cruise, you're going to love this movie.
Yeah, this is a real video game of a
It's-
movie.
It really
Yeah.
is.
Game over. Try again.
And if you have any questions or comments that you want to talk about with this movie beforehand, you can hit me up on my Twitter handle, Robinson is Hyde.
And I am at Jen Marlis, Jen with 2 N's, on Twitter and Instagram.
And I am at Foreman in Space.
Foreman with no E.
No E.
Yeah.
Yes. Not related to George Foreman. And that should do it for this week's episode. So until next time, see you later, travelers.
See?
Out of time.
Out of time.
We're out of
We're
time.
out of time, yeah. We'll get it. We'll get there.